Maggie asked her if it had been a church or a chapel.
No, I think the church or chapel is up there on the slope opposite, probably now hidden among the trees and shrubs surrounding that house.
She pointed to a modern building, half hidden by huge conifers.
You told me once that there is the remains of a Saxon cross beside the road up there. Yes, there is. There's only the old stone base still there, with a much later granite cross on top.
It suddenly came to her.
Is this why the road is called Priest Lane? There must have been a church here at some time.
The nearest is in the next village about 3 miles away. We can't count the little chapel further up the road, because that's only been there for about 100 years.
Anne's pendulum was swinging fiercely in circles.
It says yes. Thinking back to this building. What was it and why was it here? It would have been the living quarters for the monks who tended the poor souls who died in the hospital in your other field. Somewhere there would have been a place where they were buried. Any ideas? There is one corner that never gets grazed. The animals don't seem to like it.
Show me.
The two women retraced their steps past the place, while Anne talked about how many people had died. They reached the corner, and Anne almost reeled.
I am not surprised, she said. There is still a stench coming from the ground, almost like rotting bodies. That can't be because they were left here hundreds of years ago. I just don't understand. Somehow I'm still getting the feeling that you were here, that you died here.
Maggie felt drained of energy. The two women silently walked back to the house. Once there, Anne asked her friend if she was willing to do some past life regression. They had to find out Maggie's connection with this place. Maggie just nodded. She needed to know. They went into Maggie's sitting room and made themselves comfortable.
I'm not going to tell you anything. I want you to sit there and tell me what you remember.
My name was John, after St. John. We lived here, my family and I. I knew the monks and sometimes worshipped with them.
Anne just nodded.
I'm so cold.
Maggie called out. As she began to shiver violently, Anne just sat quietly, listening to her friend, holding her crystal pendulum, which swung around in circles as if saying yes to everything her friend said.
I think my family died here. I was a young man. There were 7 of us. Other people in the village began to get sick and die. My mother, who was a kindly soul, took food and milk to them. I think she was the one who brought the sickness into our family.
Anne just nodded and quietly said, Go on.
One by one my family became ill. The monks took them into what we now know was the plague house, a sort of hospital. Recently I had another vision. I saw the monks emerging from the field. There were fewer now as some of them had died. They appeared to walk straight through the farm buildings we have now. I followed them, although they told me not to. When we reached the building which I can now see clearly, it looked more like a barn, and probably was in those days. People were lying on the floor crying out, calling for water and help. The monks did what they could. I helped them as best I could. There was little we could do except drag the bodies to the open area which I now know was that corner we went to.
Maggie paused again, her face changing as you relived this experience. Anne quietly got up and fetched a glass of water for her friend. Maggie gratefully sipped from it. Then she was ready to continue.
I caught it, the plague.
Anne asked how she knew.
It began with a fever and swelling under my armpits. After a few days the swellings began to leak pus. I was vomiting. At first the monks let me stay with them, but it was too dangerous. My fingers were turning black, and they said I would have to join the others in the hellhole of a barn. All around me I heard the moaning and crying out. People were left lying in their own vomit and excrement. At first I was aware of what was happening, then mercifully I drifted into nothingness.
Maggie started to cry. She began sweating. Anne knew she had to bring her friend out of this soon. What happened then? Can you remember anything more?
Yes,
Replied Maggie. Her voice cried out in anguish.
I heard my friends the monks say that there wasn't anything they could do. They had to save themselves. They boarded up the door, leaving us poor souls to die locked inside.
And you were one of them.
Yes, I was left to die.
I think you have gone through enough, Maggie. I want you to come back to now. I believe this is why I felt so much torment still coming from the earth under our feet. I was getting horror and pain and great sickness. I will go back now to that area in the field to try to put them at rest and release them from their terrible deaths. They are still trapped, and you were one of them. And spent well over an hour in the field. She explained that she couldn't release everyone at the same time. She had to work with each one separately, and that was why it took so long. Each one had to be sent to the light. It's clear now. I sent your soul in that life back to the other side. I think your monks will have also gone. They have no need to look after the poor folk who died in terrible circumstances. I also lifted the energy from the corner of the field. I think that animals will begin to graze there, and if anyone dug down several feet, they would only find a mass of skeletal bones. Oh, and by the way, I think the church up on the hill was burnt down the same time the monks' dwelling was.
Thank you, Anne. I am feeling as though a terrible cloud has lifted. It has. Just get on with your life. There is nothing here anymore. Just a hollow in the field, and if anyone cared to dig where I marked the monks' field, they would probably find old stone walls and maybe an oak beam or two. Nothing else.